Why are companies paying cybersecurity companies and not doing them themselves? That's a good question. And the reason why is because cybersecurity changes a lot. Like there's new technologies coming out, like for example, LLMs. And for you to invest, like as a company, to invest the time to protect your LLM system so that it doesn't get exploited by some hacker, then it's very expensive.
This is our first podcast in English, man.
Yeah, why are we making this decision?
But we asked you all. We asked you on Instagram, and it was like 40. Wait, what's the number? It was like 70% of y'all said that English is great. English is fine. And we talked with Andre. We actually talked a lot about this decision. And we realized that it can also be a good way for you to practice your English if you don't know any English. But if you do know any English, you'll be able to understand.
Yeah. Okay, let's get started with this. What a day. I mean, like today's market was insane. Globally, if you have a Microsoft computer, I'm wondering if your Microsoft computer crashed out of a sudden. And why did this happen? Well, today we've found out that it was CrowdStrike, which is a cybersecurity company that basically pushed the wrong code into millions of Microsoft machines that made them crash out of nowhere. And this affected financial institutions like banks. It affected hospitals. It affected airports. For example, I was talking to a friend and two friends. I saw one of their posts and another one was talking to me. I was like, I've been 6 hours stuck here. And I was like, what? They're like, why? And then I went over the news and okay, this makes sense. But yeah, what do you get from this?
Yeah, one of the things I heard, and it was surprising for me, is that someone said this is the biggest IT crash there has been in history. Yeah. And I was like, what? That's a statement. That's a huge thing. And what I'm trying to understand, I was talking to Andre because I was like, it can't be that bad. But Andre was checking all the stats, and I think you can tell us more about the stats because everything crashed. So tell us a bit more, Andre, about what happened, what effect does this type of crash can have. And after that, I think we'll explore just some random questions, but important questions, because this can happen to any company. Yeah. Code breaking can happen to any company, and the effect that can have can be like the effect that just happened. So tell us a bit more about what's the consequences of CrowdStrike crashing.
Yeah, so to have some context, CrowdStrike is a company that has been in the market for decades, and they're a public company. And basically they serve a bunch of the Fortune 1000. So they serve all the Fortune 500, Fortune 1000, and they have a majority of the market. And what happens if they crash? If they crash, the entire world goes to hell. And this is why what Sofi was mentioning, that this is a very huge IT problem in human history, is because, for example, we were discussing there's FTX, which is the crypto company that went bust and bankrupt. And there's the thing that happened last year here in San Francisco, which is the Silicon Valley Bank. But these were huge at the moment. And when I'm going to use the example of Silicon Valley Bank. Silicon Valley Bank happened, and a bunch of companies couldn't access their resources. So they couldn't keep their services running. And this is a huge problem. Why? Because in the course of those days that the bank crashed, literally there's an opportunity cost of these running businesses were making every day. Some of these companies were making millions by every 3 hours. So that's a liability for the bank, that the fact that they cannot access those resources. Same thing is with CrowdStrike. So CrowdStrike, because they're managing the cybersecurity at the very low end system of a computer, the fact that it crashed all Microsoft computers means that billions of dollars, we don't have the numbers yet, probably tomorrow, but they're expecting billions to trillions of dollars lost within those 6 hours and today, of this being crashed. And it's not only a problem of how this crashed, also it's a problem of this affected a lot of industries, not the financial market like Silicon Valley Bank did, but a bunch of industries around the world, as well as, and now it's a question of like, are they liable for this? Like, what is going to happen to them? So yeah, it's pretty bad.
It's pretty bad. And I was telling Andre, like, we will see what happens next, because there are so many possibilities, right? Like, they could file for bankruptcy, they could ask for help. One of the things I thought about immediately was that if they had most of the market, who's going to get the market next, right? Because from my understanding, this company is a cybersecurity company. Right. And I hear that cybersecurity right now it's starting to get huger than ever because of these things. Right. More and more each day, we rely on technology for everything, for our health, for our money, for our food, for everything. We rely more on it. And if something crashes and there's no cybersecurity to protect your data, to protect the systems, like we might, you said go to hell, but I didn't like that expression, but in a sense, right? So that's my question. That's my question that I leave for you. We'll start seeing that in the next days. And that leads me to the next topic, right? These things happen in the market all the time, maybe not at this scale, but every company has had some update uploaded that crashes some things. You work on the tech side of things, like the more technical side of things. Do you have any suggestions for maybe people that are building their own tech? Like, what should they be aware of when building tech so that they can prevent great losses and great crashes? What would you say?
Yeah. So basically, like, there's two different phases where you need to implement a bunch of testing before, like releasing something into the world. So you can either be a startup or like a big enterprise that is being relied by like 10 million customers, 100 million customers. And those are different playing fields. So whenever you're like, for example, a startup, you have you want to fail as much as you can, like publicly, but also like during your testing, because you're starting to test a new technology out, could be, and you want to assess the limitations. And like the best way to assess with the limitations is like for you to give it to your customers and tell you like, hey, like this edge case that would have been impossible for you to think about, right? It's not working. And then you fix it. Now you have like big corporations and companies, and the way you effectively do this is that, for example, OpenAI, like this is what they do before they release anything into the world. So ChatGPT, for example, OpenAI was like, I don't know, like a research lab that not many people knew about. When they released ChatGPT, but they didn't like test it or anything. They just released it to the world. They were expecting that like ChatGPT for them was like, yeah, this is normal, like normal behavior for what we've been researching for the last years, right? And they didn't expect for people to catch on so much. But just because they didn't have it public, and then they start getting all this traffic and seeing like all the all the potential issues and stuff like that, that's how they were able to move quickly and establish like a good company. But once they retrieved like this, credibility, user base, they had more power in their hands. So now they have the responsibility to basically test everything they put out in the world. And also they need to think about the politics and the societal consequences like each of these technologies that is released is going to have. So what they do now is like basically these big companies have, specifically OpenAI, but applies to every company, like have a red testing team. So they select like a set of, 500 to 1,000 users, where they basically, whenever they have a new feature, they send it to them and they try to break it. And they select these users because they're like the highest users of like GPT and want to make it do all the illegal stuff possible, So these are the type of people that basically, eventually figure out doing that. In terms of cybersecurity, that's why you hire like white hat hackers, because there's black hat and white hat hackers. And basically when you want to try the security of like your software or system, you would hire a white hat hacking company in order to, exploit everything in every single way. And usually you would not only hire one hacker, you would hire like 500 hackers attacking you in different angles and then give you a report. This is like what basically is done. In terms of like what happened with CrowdStrike, like there's not enough information to say like if this was thoroughly tested, but if such an issue happened, like usually like this errors is because they missed a zero or something in the code, right? But there's our testing method that like you would test in Microsoft's computer. Maybe they were in a time crunch or something, but still, like you would need to test these things as other companies, like big companies, are testing things. Yeah.
Thank you so much. And that's super valuable information for every person that's building a tech company. Start thinking about cybersecurity, right? That's very important right now. You saw what happened today. We invite you to keep reading more on those news because, as we mentioned, it has been one of the biggest crashes of IT in history. So let's learn more about that. Any book that you would recommend regarding, cybersecurity? Any article you can think about right now? If not, you can add it in the chat.
No, I have a story. So, like about cybersecurity, and basically, I was looking into the Collinson's brothers, past experience before they built Stripe. Which is like a financial company. And basically, like when they were growing up, like Patrick and his brother, I don't remember, but like Patrick started building his websites and then his brother would hack those websites, which was so funny. And every time like Patrick wanted to impress his friends or family, then his brother would come up and like crash it so that his friends like wouldn't be able to do that. But like all this, like, they went on to build Stripe and stuff like that. But the point, like with the story of like trying to break your system, right, or your friend's system, is that it's so important because you can start building, like a very valuable company and not care about cybersecurity. But what when you start like growing insanely and you don't have time to put much on cybersecurity, right? But it raises the attention for other people to target you because there's a lot of hackers in the world, and they basically want to scrape like all the data in your databases so that they can sell in the black market or whatever it is, because it's a very dark world out there. But that's how they do it. So take care of cybersecurity as much as you can. Like when you start building out, basically like when you have some signs of like, okay, this product works, then start worrying about that. That way, like when you grow and you cannot put so many like resources because you're handling all the growth, like no attackers can like easily go get inside your system.
Yeah. Awesome.
Like why are companies paying cybersecurity companies and not doing them themselves? Okay. That's a good question. And the reason why is because cybersecurity changes a lot. Like there's new technologies coming out, like for example, LLMs. And for you to invest, like as a company, to invest the time to protect your LLM system so that it doesn't get exploited by some hacker, then it's very expensive to consider every single one. So that's why they outsource it to like these major companies like CrowdStrike, because it not only reduces like you need to pay millions of dollars like for like something like CrowdStrike a year, but basically it solves two problems. The first problem it solves is that you don't have to write code for new attacks. So their job is to constantly update the code so they're protected from every single new attack that like they innovate, like hackers innovate. And second is because companies don't want to be liable in case they get hacked, so they can blame someone else.
And then blame CrowdStrike.
Exactly. So that's that's the industry of cybersecurity. Like basically you can expect that if you mess up, you're gonna get blamed on everything and it's gonna be very bad business for you. So yeah, that's why like running a cybersecurity company is, I cannot imagine that it'll be easy. Like 100%.
If you wanna do that, we support you. Do it. Well, that's it for today. Today was very updatey because there was a big update in the technology ecosystem right now. As you know, this is Sofia, this is Andre. We are living in Silicon Valley right now, but we're Latinos. We're both from Guatemala. We'll keep sharing with you all of our lessons. We will also share some of these news and updates. So stay tuned, subscribe, suscríbete, ya papi, love you. TQM.